Kaelin's paws struck the ancient stone of Dargot's outer wall with a thunderous impact. Moonlight glinted on his fur, turning each strand into a silver thread that shimmered under the night sky. He let out a low growl of determination and lunged again, claws sinking deep into the masonry. The iron-bound gate groaned and splintered around him, as if protesting the force of his assault. Above, the vampire lords watched from the battlements, their pale faces twisted in mocking amusement. Lady Isadora leaned forward, her dark hair falling like a shadow over her shoulder. She crossed her arms, curiosity flickering in her golden eyes. "He thinks his strength is enough to break our defenses," she murmured to herself. None had dared such an attack before, but Kaelin made them pay attention. A ripple of panic spread among the vampire's sentinels. Ornate spears and swords, once held with confident ease, clattered to the ground as astonishment gripped their hearts. The rumors of a lone werewolf champion had reached their ears, but no one had truly believed them. Until now. As the gate's final shard of wood snapped away, a gap appeared, wide enough for Kaelin to slip through. He paused at the breach, catching his breath. His chest heaved, and beads of sweat formed along his muzzle despite the cool night air. The scent of fear and brimstone wafted up from the courtyard beyond. Lanterns flickered like trapped fireflies, casting tremulous light across broken columns and overturned benches. Kaelin felt his heart hammering, not from exhaustion but from a deep, fierce joy. At last, he stood inside the fortress he had come so far to challenge. High above him, the vampire lords descended winding staircases, their robes swirling like living shadows. They'd formed a circle in the center of the courtyard, each one confident that their superior numbers and speed would swiftly defeat this outsider. Isadora, however, remained at the edge of the circle, studying Kaelin's posture. He did not tremble. He did not flinch. Instead, he glared at them, his amber eyes burning with undiminished purpose. "Welcome, Wolf," called Lord Valerian, his voice smooth and cold as obsidian. "You have done well to reach us, but your strength is meaningless here." He tapped a finger against his chest, drawing a small vial from within his cloak. "Behold the blood of the fallen. One drop of this, and your savage power will wither." Kaelin's growl deepened. He took a cautious step forward, the broken stones crunching beneath his weight. "Your tricks won't frighten me," he replied, voice rough but steady. "I did not come to parley. I came to reclaim what was stolen." A ripple of energy pulsed through the courtyard as Valerian crushed the vial in his hand. A crimson mist erupted, drifting toward Kaelin in ghostly tendrils. The werewolf braced himself, muscles coiling like springs. For a moment, the world held its breath. Then, with a roar that shook the fortress walls, Kaelin lunged through the blood-red cloud, his claws outstretched and eyes blazing. In that instant, every vampire in the courtyard stiffened. They had mocked his weakness, but now they faced his unbreakable will. The first blow would fall, and with it, the beginning of the siege that none would ever forget. Kaelin's claws tore through the crimson haze, but as he struck, his momentum carried him straight into the outstretched arms of Lady Isadora. She had stepped between him and the circle of vampire lords at the very last moment. He staggered back, surprised by her sudden intervention, while the others hissed in anger. Isadora's fingers curled around the hilt of his sword. Her grip was firm and surprisingly warm, even through his gauntlet. Kaelin's amber eyes locked onto her pale face, and he saw something in her golden gaze that he had never expected. Mercy. She squeezed his arm gently, steadying him. "Stay your blade," she whispered, her voice softer than moonlight on water. Lord Valerian unleashed a furious cry and lunged forward, but Isadora drew a small, blood-red rose from within her cloak and held it aloft. The rose glowed faintly, its petals trembling as if beating with a hidden heart. Valerian froze, momentarily dumbfounded by the sight. "Put down your weapon, Kaelin," she commanded, her tone brokering no argument. The courtyard fell silent. Even the hovering mists seemed to halt its swirl. Kaelin's breathing was loud in the stillness. He glanced from the rose to Isadora's unwavering eyes and then lowered his sword, setting it blade first into the cracked stone at his feet. The gesture was small, but it marked a turning point, an act of trust that no one could ignore. Isadora stepped aside, allowing Kaelan to retrieve the rose. He cradled its stem gently between his massive fingers, its petals unfurling like a promise. The air tasted of iron and wildflowers, a strange combination that made his heart beat easier. With each petal's soft glow, the tension in the courtyard eased. Lord Valerian recovered first. His robes flared as he advanced, powdering the ground with shadow. "You betray your own kind, sister," he spat at Isadora. "You side with the beast." Isadora's lips curved into a small, resolute smile. "He is no beast," she replied, voice clear and unwavering. "He is the key to our salvation." Kaelan rose to his full height, fur rippling beneath his leather jerkin. He took a step toward Valerian, rose still in hand. "Your tyranny has hurt too many," he said, his voice calm but edged with steel. "I only wish to restore balance." At his words, something shifted among the assembled vampires. Their rigid ranks softened as centuries of fear gave way to curiosity. Whispers stirred. Could a werewolf truly carry the hope of two warring races? Isadora lowered her hand, allowing the rose to fall into Kaelan's palm. Its petals drifted to dust, leaving only a single hardened thorn. He pressed the thorn to his chest, letting a drop of his own blood drip onto it. Across the courtyard, Isadora mirrored the gesture, drawing a pinprick of crimson from her finger. Their blood met on the thorn and sizzled with pale light. A tremor ran through the fortress walls, as though the very stones acknowledged the bond forged in that moment. Kaelan felt strength flow through him, a power that was neither solely wolf nor vampire but something entirely new. Isadora's golden eyes met his, and in that silent glance, they both understood. Their destinies were now intertwined. Behind them, the vampire lords fell silent, caught between outrage and wonder. And in the hush that followed, the first step of an unlikely alliance took root, one that would shake the foundations of Dargoth and change the fate of both species forever. Kaelan followed Lady Isadora through a narrow archway at the edge of the courtyard. The stones there were damp and covered in moss, slick under his heavy boots. Isadora held her lantern high, its golden light casting long shadows that danced on the walls. Every drip of water echoed through the tunnel, sounding like distant footsteps. They descended a spiral staircase carved into the rock. Each step was worn smooth by centuries of feet, and the air grew cooler as they went deeper. Kaelan's claws scraped softly on the stone, and he could feel the weight of the fortress above pressing down on him. He glanced at Isadora, who seemed calm and sure. Her pale face glowed in the lantern's light, and her eyes shone with purpose. At the bottom, they entered a chamber lined with ancient sarcophagi. Runes covered each lid, twisting in elegant curves that none in Dargoth had dared read for hundreds of years. The air was thick with dust and the faint scent of old flowers long since dried. Small alcoves held vials of mysterious powders and scrolls sealed with wax. Isadora set her lantern on a stone pedestal in the center of the room. "These catacombs hold our history," she said softly. "They hold secrets our lords would rather forget." She ran her fingers over the runes on the nearest sarcophagus. "Knowledge here can free us or destroy us." Kaelan nodded, crouching beside another sarcophagus. He brushed away dust, revealing a carving of a wolf and a bat entwined in a circle. His amber eyes widened. "This symbol, I have seen it in old tales," he said. "It speaks of unity and power." Isadora's lips curved into a small smile. "Yes, the prophecy of the silver thorn," she whispered. "It tells of a werewolf and a vampire joining their blood under moonlight to restore balance. But no one believed it was real." She opened the sarcophagus with a hiss of shifting stone. Inside lay an obsidian dagger set upon a bed of velvet. Its blade was narrow and curved, gleaming like liquid night. The handle was wrapped in deep red leather, embroidered with silver threads that traced the same wolf and bat emblem. "This dagger was forged by the first lords of Dargoth," Isadora explained, lifting it carefully. "They bound their power into this blade. It can channel both vampire magic and werewolf strength." She offered it to Kaelan, who took it with reverence. The touch sent a warm pulse up his arm. A distant rumble shook the chamber. Dust fell from the ceiling, and a lantern flickered. Isadora's brow creased. "The council will sense this," she said. "We must act quickly." Kellen placed the dagger at his side. "What must we do?" Isadora unrolled one of the wax-sealed scrolls. The parchment crackled under her fingers as she read aloud. "At the heart of the fortress, where dawn and dusk collide, join blood and shadow to awaken the silver throne." She paused, eyes meeting Kalen's. "We need to reach the obsidian hall by sunrise. There the old altar awaits." He nodded, determination burning in his chest. "Then we have little time." They extinguished the lantern and moved deeper into the catacombs. Darkness swallowed them, broken only by the faint glow of the dagger's runes. With each step their bond strengthened. Two souls bound by purpose, ready to face the council's wrath and fulfill an age-old prophecy that could change their world forever. Kellen crept through the torchlit halls of the Crimson Keep, the obsidian dagger strapped to his belt and Isadora's hand in his. Marble pillars loomed like silent sentinels, their carved faces glowering down at the intruders. Moonlight filtered through high windows, painting silver trails on polished floors. Each step echoed, a drumbeat of their shared resolve. At the summit hall, grand tapestries depicted ancient battles between wolves and bats. A long table of black iron stood at the center, where the Vampire Council had gathered for their midnight rite. Candles flickered in golden holders, casting dancing shadows across the lords' pale faces. Kalen's heart thundered as they approached, but Isadora's steady grip kept his nerves in check. "Brothers and sisters," Lord Valerian intoned, voice smooth as polished stone. "Tonight we bind our power to crush any who dare oppose us." A murmur of approval rippled through the assembly. Kalen felt the weight of dozens of cold stares but did not waver. Isadora stepped forward, lifting the runed dagger. "Your reign ends now," she declared, voice ringing clear. Gasps filled the hall. Valerian scowled and raised a gloved hand to silence them. "You betray your blood, sister," he hissed. "Return the blade and forsake this madness." Kalen's amber eyes blazed. He drew a slow breath and placed his free hand on the dagger's hilt. A faint hum of power pulsed through the metal, stirring the council's unease. "We come to end your tyranny," he said. "Join us or stand aside." The council lord closest to him lunged with a silver blade, but Kalen sidestepped, cloak swirling. With a single motion, he knocked the blade free and sent the vampire stumbling backward. Shouts rose as more lords leaped to attack. Isadora raised her palm, tracing runes in the air. Pale energy flared, creating a barrier at Kalen's back. Bolts of light curved outward, repelling dozens of assailants at once. The hall erupted into chaos. Swords clashed, robes tore, and hisses of magic filled the chamber. In the midst of the fray, Kalen spotted Morgantha, Isadora's elder sister, slipping through a side corridor. He lunged toward her, but a sudden flash of steel at his back frozen in place. He spun, blade raised, to see Morgantha standing behind Isadora with a poisoned dagger. In one swift move, she plunged it into Isadora's shoulder. Isadora cried out, her lantern-blue eyes widening with shock. She staggered forward and Kalen let out a pained roar. He dropped his sword and caught her as she fell. Blood bloomed on her white dress like a dark rose. Morgantha laughed, a cold, cruel sound that echoed off the marble walls. "You belong to us," she spat at Isadora. "No curse can change that." Kalen rose to his full height, pressing Isadora's trembling form against him. His claws extended, metal ripping from the pillar as he prepared to strike. Across the hall, the remaining vampires hesitated, their leader wounded, their power challenged. With Isadora's blood dripping over his hand, Kalen felt a surge of impossible strength. His howl shattered the night, a sound so fierce it seemed the very stones would crack. As the echo faded, he met the council's shocked gazes. "This ends tonight," he vowed, voice low but unbreakable. Isadora laid a hand on his arm, her own wounds forgotten in the fire of their shared purpose. In that moment of betrayal and fury, There was once an outsider and a traitor came together, bound by blood, destined to claim their city, no matter the cost. Kaelan limped into the silver wood just beyond Dargoth's northern wall, the obsidian dagger still at his side and Isadora's hand firmly in his. Towering pines loomed overhead, their needles whispering secrets in the rising wind. Raindrops began to fall, cold and sharp, as if the sky itself had turned to silver shards. Thunder rolled in the distance, echoing the tumult in Kaelan's heart. Isadora pressed her free hand to the wound on her shoulder. Blood seeped between her fingers, dark against her pale skin. She shook her head, forcing a small smile despite the pain. "We must reach the clearing," she said, voice steady. "The full moon is high. We have only moments." He guided her along the narrow path, roots twisting beneath their boots like restless serpents. Lightning flashed, illuminating their determined faces. Fur streaked and blood-stained, gown tattered yet glowing with purpose. At last, they emerged into a moonlit glade. Pale light spilled across a circle of ancient stones, each carved with runes now faint but still alive with power. Kaelan set Isadora gently on the moss-carpeted ground. He knelt beside her, wiping rainwater from her eyes. She drew the obsidian dagger from his belt, its runes pulsing faintly in the lunar glow. "The lunar pact," she whispered. "It must bind our blood and magic together." He nodded, heart pounding. Above them, the full moon hung low, so bright it seemed to burn the edges of the dark canopy. They knelt facing each other at the circle's center. Isadora lifted a silver chalice she had carried in her cloak. Within it lay drops of her own blood, caught after her wound. Kaelan took a deep breath and cut his palm with the dagger's edge. His blood fell into the chalice, mingling with hers in swirling crimson patterns. Thunder cracked overhead as Isadora recited the ancient words carved into the stones. Her voice rang out, steady and clear. "By moon's embrace and blood's decree, unite our fates for all to see." The chalice trembled, and their poured blood lit the ground with a soft red glow. A low growl rolled through the glade. From the shadows stepped a massive spectral wolf, fur like mist and eyes glowing with moonfire. Its form stretched and shifted, impossible in its size. The guardian of the pact watched them with unreadable calm. Kaelan rose to his feet, placing himself between Isadora and the beast. He raised the dagger, its blade reflecting the ghostly wolf. "We do this for peace," he said firmly. "We accept whatever judgment you deliver." The spectral wolf's growl deepened. It circled them, nostrils flaring as it sniffed the air heavy with magic and longing. Lightning lit its form in sudden bursts, revealing runes etched into its fur that matched those on the obsidian dagger. Then, with a final resonant howl, it lowered its head and vanished into silver light, leaving only a faint echo on the wind. In that instant, the runes on the dagger flared bright white. A wave of warmth washed over Kaelan and Isadora, easing their pain and strengthening their limbs. The storm stilled. Raindrops froze midair before falling gently to the earth. Isadora placed her hand on Kaelan's heart. He felt her magic pulse in time with his own, two rhythms now beating as one. He returned her touch, the warmth spreading through his fur and skin. When they looked at each other, their eyes shone not with fear or doubt, but with unbreakable resolve. They stood side by side, the obsidian dagger glowing softly between them. The silverwood glade lay hushed, awaiting their return. Kaelan sheathed the blade and lifted Isadora into his arms. "Together," he said. "Together," she agreed. And with the power of the lunar pact coursing through their veins, they set off toward Dargoth, ready to claim their destiny at sunrise. Kaelan and Isadora emerged from the silverwood just as first light brushed the horizon. Their breath steamed in the cool morning air as they approached Dargoth's battered gates. Word of Kaelan's return and the lunar pact had spread through the city in whispers and chants. Werewolves and sympathetic vampires gathered behind them, filling the courtyard with a tide of expectation. Kaelan's heart pounded at the sight of allies standing ready, furred shapes crouched low, wings folded in silence, all united beneath one cause. Isadora raised the obsidian dagger on high. Its runes glowed with pale white light that chased away the last shadows of night. She spoke their vow in a clear voice. By blood and moon, we claim this city back from tyranny. A collective roar rose from the assembled warriors. Kalen let his own howl join hers, a sound so fierce it seemed to split the dawn. Soldiers on the walls peered over the ramparts, their faces drained of confidence. The siege had begun in earnest. The first charge was led by Kalen himself. He vaulted through the open gate with the speed of a striking wolf. His claws cut through iron bars and shattered shields as he carved a path toward the central keep. Behind him, werewolves leaped over broken gates and vampires cloaked in swirling mist encircled the courtyard. Arrows flew and swords clashed, but Kalen's presence inspired them all. Soldiers who once feared his kind now fought at his side, their strength magnified by the Lunar Pact's magic. Inside the keep, the council's remaining lords rallied on a grand staircase. They hurled spells of shadow and flame, hissing threats as they descended toward the battle below. Isadora advanced alone up the stairs, her gown torn but her spirit unbroken. She raised both hands, and torrents of silver light rained down, washing over the attackers like a cleansing flood. Vampires who stood against her faltered, their dark magic unraveling in the radiant glow. Slowly the staircase trembled and collapsed behind her, cutting off the council's escape. In the throne chamber above, Lord Valerian stood alone, his pale face a mask of fury and fear. Kalen entered with steady steps, the obsidian dagger gleaming in his hand. Valerian lunged, but Kalen met him with a powerful swing, disarming him in one swift motion. The final clash rang out. A sharp crack as steel met magic. At last, Kalen pressed the dagger to Valerian's chest. The runes flared, and the tyrant cried out as centuries of cruelty were bound and broken. With Valerian defeated, the city fell silent. Kalen lowered his blade and extended a hand to Isadora, who joined him at the throne's base. Together, they ascended the dais, and cheers erupted through every hall and alley. The sun's first rays crowned them in golden light. A werewolf king and a vampire queen, united by blood and purpose. In that moment, Dargoth breathed freely again, free from fear and division. And as Kalen and Isadora stood side by side on the silver throne, they knew their bond had changed the fate of their world forever. Kalen stood at the heart of the grand plaza, sunlight dancing off the silver scales that now adorned his shoulders. Before him stretched the newly rebuilt city square, its cracked stones replaced with polished moonstone tiles that glowed faintly at night. Citizens, vampires and werewolves alike, moved among market stalls draped in silken banners of white and crimson. Their faces wore expressions Kalen had never thought possible: hope, joy, and unity. At his side, Isadora watched the scene with quiet pride. Her dark hair was braided back, and her eyes shone like twin moons. She wore a simple gown of pale gray, trimmed in silver runes that pulsed softly with magic. Children wove between her feet, reaching up to touch her hem or glimpse the dagger she wore at her waist, a symbol now not of war, but of peace. Kalen turned to her, his amber eyes warm. "The city breathes again," he said, voice low but full of wonder. Isadora smiled and slipped her hand into his. "We have given them a new life," she replied, "a life without fear." Together, they walked among their people. A group of young vampires bowed respectfully before Isadora, offering her a bouquet of night-blooming flowers. Nearby, a pack of wolves nuzzled Kalen's leg, tails wagging as if they had never known sorrow. Merchants shouted greetings, and musicians played lilting tunes on silver flutes. The hum of laughter filled the air, a melody more powerful than any battle cry. Approaching the newly erected silver throne in the center of the square, Kalen and Isadora paused before its gleaming surface. The throne was carved from a single block of moonstone, its arms shaped like a wolf's paw and a bat's wing intertwined. On its seat lay the obsidian dagger, now sheathed in white leather, a testament to the unity they had forged. A herald stepped forward and bowed deeply. "Your Majesty," he said, voice echoing in the hush that fell over the crowd. By decree of the new council, you are summoned to claim your seat and address your subjects. Kalen exchanged a glance with Isadora. With a nod, he stepped forward and lifted the dagger, holding it aloft in both hands. The runes along the blade glowed with pale light, and a ripple of magic swept through the plaza. Murmurs rose like wind over water as every eye followed his movement. He laid the dagger across his lap and sat upon the throne. Isadora knelt beside him, placing her hand gently over his. From her lips came words both solemn and bright. Let this day mark the dawn of a realm where the moonlight guides us and our hearts bind us. No longer shall we be torn by ancient hatred. Together we stand as one people, vampire and werewolf, bound by honor and love. A cheer erupted, rolling through the crowd like thunder. Flags waved and confetti of silken petals drifted down like snowfall. Kalen rose, extending his free hand to Isadora. As she rose beside him, they turned to face their people together. In that moment, time itself seemed to pause. The city healed, the bond sealed, and two rulers, once enemy, now allies, standing united. Their story would be told for generations. How a lone werewolf and a vampire lady forged a pact of blood and magic, toppled tyranny, and rebuilt a world where love shone brighter than any shadow. And as Kalen and Isadora looked out over Dargoth, their hearts beat in perfect harmony, ready to lead their people into a new age of peace and wonder. The morning sun climbed over the distant hills, casting long golden rays across the silver throne and the newly peaceful city of Dargoth. Kalen and Isadora stood on the highest parapet of the castle, gazing out over the rooftops, spires, and winding streets now filled with life and laughter. The crisp air carried the scent of blooming night flowers and baking bread, a simple reminder that peace had returned. Below them, children chased one another through the market square, their laughter echoing against the moonstone tiles. Merchants unpacked fresh wares, baskets of sweet fruits, woven tapestries dyed in sunrise hues, and silver-threaded cloaks for travelers. Wolves padded quietly alongside villagers, tails low in respect, yet eyes bright with curiosity. Vampires strolled arm in arm with former hunters, sharing jokes and tales as easily as lifelong friends. Kalen rested a large hand on the cool stone ledge, his fur shifting in the gentle breeze. He turned to Isadora, whose dark hair caught the sunlight like spun silk. "Our city wakes to hope," he said softly. "I never imagined such a morning would come." Isadora smiled, her golden eyes soft with pride. She reached out and brushed a strand of hair from his face. "You made it possible," she replied. "Your courage and heart showed them a new way." He shook his head, humility shining in his amber gaze. "We," he corrected. "You led me through the darkness. Together, we changed history." They shared a quiet moment, two rulers no longer bound by old fears but united in purpose. Behind them, the silver throne room's stained glass windows caught the sunlight, scattering rainbows across the polished floor. Servants arranged fresh flowers on silver tables, and council members conferred in low voices about rebuilding roads and schools, about healing old wounds with festivals and shared feasts. Suddenly, a soft trumpet sounded in the plaza below, a signal for the day's first council meeting. Kalen and Isadora had exchanged a playful glance and clasped hands. With steady steps, they descended the grand stair carved from marble, the obsidian dagger at Kalen's side now sheathed in white leather. At the bottom, representatives of every clan, vampire, werewolf, and human stood waiting in respectful silence. As they approached, the council's eldest member, a silver-haired elder named Thane, raised a hand. "Your Majesties," he began, voice trembling with emotion, "we celebrate a new dawn. We vow to honor the pact of blood and moonlight, to protect and nurture this city for all." The assembly bowed in unison. Isadora inclined her head. "We will," she said, voice clear. "By compassion and strength." Kalen stepped forward and added, "and by unity. Let this city be a beacon forged from our differences, guided by our shared dreams." A cheer rose, filling the hall with warmth. Sunlight streamed through the doors as if the day itself celebrated. Kalen and Isadora stood together, Hands joined, hearts aligned. Outside, Darga thrummed with life. Church bells pealed, hounds barked playfully, and minstrels tuned their instruments for the day's first psalm. In that golden morning, two rulers, once enemies bound by ancient hatred, embraced their new roles. Their love, born of battle and bound by blood, now shone brighter than any sword or spell. And as Kalen and Isadora looked out over the city they saved, they knew that the true triumph was not the throne they claimed, but the hope they kindled in every heart below.